Live Text Access, Training for Real-Time Intralingual Subtitlers. This is Unit 1, Understanding Accessibility. Element 3, Embedding Accessibility in Working Environments. In this video lecture, we show the first part of an interview with Mohamed Shakra, a real-time intralingual subtitler from Sweden. He will talk about the role of real-time subtitles in the educational setting. My name is Piero Cavallo from the Internationale Hochschule SDI München in Germany. I have prepared this video lecture in collaboration with Rocio Bernabé-Caro, also from SDI München, and the European Federation of Hard of Hearing, in short, EFHO. On completion of the training sequence, you will be able to advise customers about how to best set up an accessible real-time working environment for persons with hearing loss in the trained working contexts and settings. To achieve that, we will show testimonials and interviews of professionals. The agenda is very short. First, I'm going to introduce our invited speaker, Mohamed Shakra. Then I will illustrate the topics of the interview. Finally, we will end the video lecture with a summary. Please note that this is the first part of the interview. First of all, let me introduce you Mohamed Shakra. Mohamed Shakra is from Sweden. He has medium-long brown hair and a beard. He has been working as a real-time subtitler for 15 years. He is the founder of Svensk Skrifttolkning, a company which provides real-time subtitle services across Sweden since 2013. Let me give you some information before watching the first part of the interview. In the first part of the interview, Mohamed talks about the importance of real-time subtitles as an access service to provide accessibility in educational settings, primarily for schools and higher education. Then, Mohamed highlights the importance of planning when working in this particular setting. Finally, he talks about the equipment needed. Okay, let's watch the video now. Hi, Mohamed.
Hi.
This interview will be about providing accessibility with real-time intralingual subtitles in the education field. So you have been working in this field for many years. And can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. So my name is Mohamed Shakra. I've been working as a speech-to-text interpreter for about 15 years now. Basically, I started the company Skrivtolkning.se 8 years ago now. And our aim has basically been to develop the field as well as provide services within the field. From the beginning until now, it has grown, it has spread to deaf users, and a lot more people are actually using it also within higher education, which has taught us a lot about how to work with different parties in being able to provide good live captions.
Okay, as a professional who works in this field, in the educational field, what do you need to provide good service and provide accessibility to your end users?
So before I start answering this question, I'd just like to say that usually I talk about primary users and secondary users, where the primary user is the one making use of the subtitles, and the secondary user is the one conveying information in any way. And I say this because usually when we work as interpreters, we try to keep a neutral stance between the primary user and the secondary user for them to feel that the interpreter is unbiased or is not changing or altering the message in any way. Whereas in the educational context, we view the interpreter as closer to the secondary user. So, for example, the teacher or the team of teachers in a course or a class around a student, we need to actually establish a professional and well-working cooperation or partnership with them, because our goals in a way intersect. So the teacher holds classes where they try to convey knowledge or information. And as interpreters, we're actually the conduit for that aim of knowledge acquisition or knowledge transference to the student. As I said, I think this is quite a different way to view one's own role in an interpreting context or environment. The main goal, I think, is to try to build an understanding with the teacher or the staff of the possibilities and the limits of speech to text interpreting. I'm going to give a couple of examples. So, for example, if we say maths, and you have a math teacher, usually the teacher writes equations on the board. And depending on the level of maths, obviously the equations aren't going to be a straight line with pluses and minuses. They're going to be across lines, and they're going to start writing or painting arrows from one place to another and dots and everything. And that's very difficult to get in any software. Plus, the higher up you get into maths, you're actually running a higher risk of misrepresenting whatever the teacher is saying. So in this case, it becomes really important for the interpreter to know when to write and when to point at what is being written on the board. And establishing a procedure which is very clear, both with the teacher, so that the teacher knows when do we point and when do we represent or translate or type whatever is being said. But also for the student to understand where it should put his or her attention at any given time, so that they have the time to acquire the message or the information from the teacher. And if we take physical education as an example, so in high school or upper secondary school or whatever, it's important to make the teacher understand, for example, that give the instructions maybe before the lesson starts, or at least don't give instructions at the same time as an ongoing activity. Let's say you're playing dodgeball. Maybe give the instructions to dodgeball before dodgeball starts. And then if you have like player swaps or something during the game, maybe also talk to the teacher about, if you want to signal stuff like that, have visual signals or something, because I won't be able to interpret whatever you say during the activity. So this relationship or partnership with the teacher actually helps to plan for accessibility for the student. It's key in these types of situations. But other than that, I'd say obviously understanding the curriculum and the learning objectives might not seem very important for you as an interpreter, but actually is, so that you know, how does this that we're doing today tie into the long-term goal? So while you're interpreting, you know what to put in that's not being said. Sometimes that's needed in order for the message to come across clearer. And how to handle the actual lessons, but also to plan for things in the curriculum. I'd say also understanding the fundamental pedagogy of different types of subjects. So how do I handle math, for example? So how am I going to handle more practical subjects like cooking or whatever from a technical point of view? And the overall setting, actually knowing what rooms you're going to be in. So, if you can sit close to like if there's a front bench that you can actually sit on, or if you're outdoors, if you're going to a museum, are there going to be chairs there, or should I bring my own chair, if you want to sit down while typing, or should I have one of these, I don't know if you've seen them, like a board that you hang on your stomach so you can walk around typing. So understanding the setting, understanding the context, understanding the environment, basically to help you plan for what you need to bring and what you need to teach in terms of, from the primary and secondary user.
So planning is very important.
Planning is everything when it comes to this type of interpreting, because it's based on, your role is not just to convey information. Your role is to be part of knowledge, like the transfer of knowledge, which is you need to see yourself almost as a teacher in a way. I want to really point out the importance of this partnership in order to be able to plan, and in order for the teacher, the staff, and the student to accept you as an authority, in getting your plans accommodated or your ideas taken into account. And I say partnership because, I wouldn't say consultant, where you come in and tell the teacher what to do and what not to do, because you have to respect their authority and their knowledge. But if you build a working relationship, they're going to provide you with information you don't need, even because they're going to ask you, because they respect you. So do you need this? Do you think this is all right? So I'm thinking about this session. I was planning to do, I don't know, switch places in the middle of the lesson. Do you think that would work? So just being a part of the planning really helps you to be able to influence, but also get information that you need without asking along every step of the way.
And does the teacher usually send you the information before the lesson? How does it work?
So I'd say there are two types of teachers. One type of teacher that goes, okay, so these are the books we're gonna have this semester, and another type of teacher that actually either asks you for maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks to just go through what's gonna happen the next week or two, and look at mainly the practical side of their lessons. So usually we have like a startup meeting at the beginning of a semester where we kind of explain, how we work, what we usually do, just to raise their awareness and have them come up with, understand the situation so they can come up with questions in relation to their subject, for example. And then obviously you don't want to be too pushy. So we kind of have them decide the pace. Do they send us information before each lecture, or do they want a meeting once every week, 2 weeks, or a month, to talk about what's coming up ahead? I mean, the most hurdlesome kind of situation is where you send an email before each lecture or day to a teacher and you go, so, hey, I'm coming back tomorrow again. Could you send me some information? And what you want is for them to include you, like, in their mind, but also in practice. If there's say a guest lecture, you can get the teacher to actually speak for you or include you in their communication with others, then you can focus on the important task at hand of preparing for the lessons.
What about the equipment you use? What kind of equipment do you need?
Obviously, background information and materials like lectures, speaker notes, or lecture plans are always a part of preparations. And then a computer and a keyboard of choice. I'd say preferably the most silent keyboard you can find, and a software. And for us, a suitable software is a software that in educational settings has two main properties. One property is that the text can be scrolled through during the lecture, because we work with students that have visual impairments, for example, or with dyslexia or with attention deficiencies, on top of their hearing impairment. So actually being able to acquire the text at a pace that suits you, at the same time as you're taking in the room and your surroundings, what's happening on the board in the room, for example, I think is very important. And you also want a solution where the student gets a cordless device, so they can read the text on their tablet, a smartphone, or a computer, because you want them to be able to move around, because sometimes the lesson requires that. But also, from an integrity point of view, you don't want them connected to you via cord, because it's about freedom of movement, obviously, and personal integrity, and a means of communication between you and the student via some software where they can ask you questions. Could you please, I don't know, make the text bigger on my screen, or just so that you can talk to them, even if you don't know sign language, which a lot of us that work with speech to text interpreting don't. You can still communicate with them. And obviously, if possible, a comfortable chair if you're on site, which is adjustable in height. I mean, it's very difficult to decide on what table am I going to sit at, because most usually we want to sit at the front of the room. Or if we can't sit in the front of the room, we usually bring like technical aids that people that have a hearing impairment use. Either you go via the induction loop and you have like a hearing aid yourself so that you hear everything that goes into a microphone clearly. Or we have a version where you put like a microphone close to the teacher on the table and you listen in through a receiver. So that's important, if you understand that we're going to sit in a big meeting hall and we're sitting way up back, because so we want to make sure that we can bring equipment to be able to hear what's being said easily. But most often we just sit at the front of the classroom. Yeah, I think that's it. Pen and paper, always good to have pen and paper when you go to class. Yeah, in terms of equipment, that's definitely it. And obviously, if you're sitting remotely, that's the main difference. You can have your own technical setup the way you like it, the way you want it. With two screens where you have reading materials on one and your software on the other, where you can Google stuff when your co-interpreter is interpreting, so you can support them with spelling or corrections or things like that. So I'd say for remote working, then the technical setup and the ergonomic setup is usually a lot better. Whereas the auditive situation or possibilities are worse, because it's going to depend on, how good a microphone does everyone have in this setting. How good are they at actually turning their microphone off when they're not talking,
Yeah. So it is the school that provides you with the equipment when you're on site,
We have our own equipment. So basically that's what we provide, is the technical equipment to be able to provide the service. Because I mean there are as many kinds of keyboards that there are people. So for example, we as a company, we have some interpreters that write on a velotype, and that's asking quite a lot from, for example, a school, to also provide a keyboard that costs that much. But also when it comes to computers, some might like a computer that's one way, and others might want a computer that's another way. So we as a company have all these kinds of equipment, and we choose equipment based on the user preference or the situation at hand. That's what we provide. The school supports us obviously with like if they have classrooms that have induction loop, they might prioritize our student and us for those classrooms, or they might provide us with a comfortable adjustable chair, for example, so we don't have to bring our own. But other than that, we bring the technical equipment that we need to work. That's what we get. We get paid to provide this service. And obviously some schools, they're really accommodating with like a really good chair. We have a place, where they got us like the best chair ever, and you're really happy about that. But it's nothing that we ask for or require.
The summary. To briefly sum up, we can say that real-time subtitles in the educational setting work as a bridge where the knowledge is transferred between students and teachers by the subtitlers. Because of that, it is important from one side to establish a good working cooperation with teachers, and from the other side, also know the relevant information that needs to be transferred to the students. Then, we have seen that planning is essential when working in the educational setting. In order to prepare for the job, you will need as much as information you can get. And to get those information, you will need to build a trustworthy relationship with teachers. Finally, we have seen that schools usually rent a real-time subtitling service from companies. Because of that, it is up to the subtitler or the company to choose the equipment that best adapts to the user's preferences or the situation. Every school or university is different and has different possibilities. Exercises. The exercises for this video lecture are in the Turner's Guide and the PowerPoint file of Part 2.
LTA, Live Text Access, Universitat Autónoma de Barcelona, SDI, Internationale Hochschule, Scuola Superiore per Mediatori Linguistici, ZDF Digital, European Federation of Hard of Hearing People FHO, Velotype, Subti Access, European Certification and Qualification Association ECQA. Co-funded by the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union. Erasmus Plus project 2018-1-DE01-KA203-004218. The information and views set on this presentation are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official opinion of the European Union. Neither the European Union institutions and bodies, nor any person acting on their behalf, may be held responsible for the use which may be made of the information contained here.